All right, you ready to go?
Okay, thank you very much. I will now call the Planning Committee meeting to order. Welcome to our virtual Planning Committee meeting. Due to the COVID-19 physical distancing measures and the order in council restricting gatherings, Planning Committee is continuing to practice physical distancing. Members of committee who are present tonight are visible. The city clerk and members of our executive management team are not visible, but are available to answer questions. I'm in the chambers here at City Hall with the clerk and our director of planning. For tonight's agenda, we have two public meetings. We do not have any staff reports on the agenda. So the purpose of this meeting tonight is to hear the comments from residents, to see the presentations and hear the comments from residents on two proposed developments. Registering prior to the meeting was encouraged, but if you are watching tonight, you haven't registered and you wish to speak, or during the meeting, if you decide you wish to speak, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 797-5353. Actually, best to call if it's during the meeting, and our staff will get you the information you need to participate tonight. So the first public meeting tonight is to review an application for a zoning bylaw amendment and a plan of condominium exemption submitted by the Jones Consulting Group on behalf of ASA Development Inc. for lands known municipally as 989 Yonge Street. That's just south of St. Paul's, in the south end of St. Paul's, down to Lockhart Road. The second public meeting is to review an application for a temporary use bylaw, which has been submitted by Smart Centers on behalf of Barrie Bryan Developments Limited for property legally described as part of Lot 7, Concession 12 in the city of Barrie, Harvey Road, Highway 400. Those are the Smart Center lands south of Harvey Road, adjacent to Highway 400. Members of Planning Committee will be listening to the presentations tonight and any comments, of course, from members of the public who do choose to give us comments tonight. We won't be commenting or debating these matters tonight. We will have the opportunity to do that when the staff reports come forward to council at a later date. If you are interested in further notification of the staff reports and you're watching tonight, if you email the Legislative Services Branch, again, that's cityclerks@barrie.ca, if you want to know when these two particular developments will be discussed and debated by council. Ms. Banfield, our Director of Development Services, could you please confirm that the notification for this meeting was conducted in accordance with the Planning Act?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it was.
Thank you very much. So I'll now call on Ray Duhamel from the Jones Consulting Group to provide the presentation concerning the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and a plan of condominium exemption for ASA Developments. This is lands known municipally as 989 Yonge Street. Mr. Duhamel, welcome to the virtual floor of Planning Committee, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we might want you to turn up just a little if you can.
All right. So I have a presentation. If I may share the screen, I will start that way. Thank you. Now that should be full screen on your end. Can somebody give me the thumbs up if that's in fact the case? Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Your Worship, members of council, committee, my name is Ray Duhamel with the Jones Consulting Group. I'm presenting this evening on behalf of ASA Development Inc., who owns 989 Yonge Street. I have a presentation that I'd like to run through, and then I am available to answer any questions. And I also have the architect, I believe, is online. I'd have to check if there's any specific architectural related questions that I cannot answer. This first slide, and hopefully you can see my cursor, shows the property that is subject to the applications in red. Here's the property. For context, this is Yonge Street, St. Paul's, the GO station. Coming back the other way, this is the Metrolinx GO line. This is the boundary between Barrie and Innisfil, which is the Lockhart Road. And the subject site is about 10.15 hectares in area, which is roughly translates into 25 acres. Has 309 meters of frontage on Lockhart Road and about 553 meters of frontage, road frontage that is on Yonge Street. The lands are located within the Hewitt Secondary Plan in the city of Barrie and the surrounding land is owned by a number of developers, and most of these projects are all in various states of approval, including Loch Maple, Rain Song, Pratt. There's a Campbell property in Ballymore, all of which are draft plan approved, and then an application that's more in its initial stages, which is Cranberry Developments. I think the application, hopefully you'll find it tonight. I'm excited about it because it represents a fairly significant departure from the historical way of developing in Barrie and in typical suburban neighborhood development. This is mixed use and high density development along a new Main Street area in the Hewitt Secondary Plan area. I think both the provincial policy statement and the growth plan speak directly to this type of development, maximizing the use of infrastructure, putting growth where it should go along transit routes to support both transit and major transit centers, stations like the GO station to the north. It's, as I will speak to in a few minutes, be located in immediate proximity to a number of community facilities. And then overall, from an environmental protection perspective in the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, there are no natural heritage features on this site, and the site will be developed in accordance with the best management practices for stormwater management, including the use of low impact development facilities. Before I begin, I just wanted to highlight a whole raft of studies. I won't speak to these at all, of course, but they're all available at the City of Barrie if you contact the Development Services Department. These are the master plans that were prepared and have been, in many cases, updated since the original planning for the Hewitt's secondary plan area commenced in 2010. And that culminated in the approval ultimately of the Hewitt secondary plan. And that's what you're looking at before you on the screen. This is the master plan community. No mysteries to council. Many development applications have already come before you. The difference in this particular case is that we're talking about an application for high density mixed use along the Yonge Street corridor, which is in itself, there's a limited number of parcels, of course, and most of the development so far has been more outward in the yellow residential and neighborhood mixed use areas and some high density areas. But this is an application, as you can see in red, the boundary, just again for orientation, Lockhart Road, Yonge Street, the GO station, and Mapleview Drive. And this property is located at the northeast corner of the intersection in what's called the Yonge Street mixed use corridor. And it's located in what's known as phase 2. So if you can see the phase 1 is effectively the areas fronting onto Mapleview Drive and up to Big Bay Point Road. And phase 2 is Lockhart Road right up to the rail line. And then phase 3 commences beyond that. So we're in the planning stages right now for phase 2. You'll have seen at least one application before that's previously been approved. That's one over on the far west here. And this is the first application that's coming before you now for approval. This is the Hewitt's master plan, which is an appendix to the secondary plan. There's of course, no municipal roads that are proposed in this area. It was always intended to be developed with private services and private roads and private driveways, of course, but it is relevant to point out a few areas immediately across the street in the draft approved Rain Song subdivision. There's a community park and a recreation center, as well as a public elementary school. And then immediately across the street, there's a planned Catholic high school. So this development will be in proximity to other high density development, both to the east, which is this orange color, as well as other high density development along the Yonge Street corridor, in addition to a number of community facilities in immediate proximity. Lastly, there's a road connection that comes along the top end of the school and connects out into Yonge Street. And we've aligned the primary entrance to the site to align with that adjacent road intersection. In short, this is a fairly straightforward rezoning application, Your Worship, members of council. We're proposing to zone the land's neighborhood mixed use in accordance with your approved zoning framework for the Hewitt secondary plan area. And we're not asking for any special provisions as part of that application. The current zoning on the lands is agricultural in accordance with the remnant the remnant town of Innisfil zoning bylaw that remains in effect until the lands are rezoned. We did undertake a number of technical studies, as is typically the case. All of these studies are on the city's website and are available for review from anybody who is interested in these items. and they include everything from hydrogeological and noise studies to shadow study plans and boundary and topographic surveys. So to the meat of the application, this is the site plan that has been developed to support the zoning application. This isn't just a pretty picture that is being flashed in front of you with the hopes of going through a rezoning process and then simply you'll see something drastically different going forward. The intention, subject to any comments that we receive from everyone sitting around the table, as well as the public process staff and agencies, is if we can work through any comments or concerns that have been addressed, the intention is to move forward with a site plan application. And what that site plan application is effectively, this is a mixed use development. I mentioned to you the alignment of the main street. So I will speak in first terms in terms of the pedestrian and traffic flow. So here's the primary entrance opposite where the street will connect to the lands immediately to the west. The intention is to have a circular drive system on the south end of the plan, and then effectively a crescent road, if you will, that connects out to Yonge Street, and hopefully will connect to the future recreation center and library driveway that is anticipated across the street in this vicinity. The overall design approach has been to focus on a few key areas. The first is the official plan identifies that both the Lockhart Road and Yonge Street intersection is a gateway into the city of Barrie, and rightfully the buildings and massing and the use of space at that intersection is very important as residents enter and leave the city. Similarly, there's also a gateway if you were on the GO train and you were coming in or leaving Barrie. A nice interface along this edge was an important consideration. We also had to plan for the eventuality that Lockhart Road may have an overpass over the rail line at some more distant future date. So we had to consider the building placement and how the underground garage system could work, knowing that there would be an overpass and a road widening, which is right here. And so ultimately the approach is to create a site that has, well, high density, has a transitioned effect in terms of density. The highest density is oriented to this side of the site, which is the south, transitioning through to mid-rise down to townhouses at the north end of the site. Another key focus was to make sure that the streetscape has prominent pedestrian and commercial doorways onto the street. So these are true mixed-use buildings. Each one of them proposed to have approximately 750 square meters of commercial space, which totals 3,000 square meters of space, with residential above. So this will be a new walkable streetscape along this edge. And then each of the townhouse units have been designed not with rear yard interfaces, but to actually have pedestrian doors that connect directly to the sidewalk. And then two more key considerations as part of the site plan was to consider how to minimize the physical massing on the site and try to reduce the amount of hard surfaces. So you will see normally when you have a plan of this magnitude, which is 1,218 units, fairly substantive outside of the downtown, and approaching, actually it's exceeding 1,400 parking spaces when you take the garage space in the townhouses into consideration. We didn't want to load up the site with surface parking. So the vast majority of the parking spaces are underground in this particular plan. There's surface commercial parking spaces and some visitor parking spaces, but the balance are underground. And what that affords us is a really unique opportunity to have some amazing amenity areas for people to congregate in this area and large green open spaces here. And then we took another constraint of the site, which is a rail berm, which has to be constructed for this site. And we've integrated a pedestrian trail network. Please note that this is very conceptual right at this point. The trail network will have to align with a fence that will have to be placed at the top of the berm. And that will be subject to very specific detailed design provisions as part of the landscaping and civil engineering submission at the site plan stage. But the intent is to be able to utilize that berm for a passive pedestrian movement. And we've also had some unique use of integrating the underground parking garage into the berm. So we're required to have a 30-meter setback to the rail line for the building spaces themselves, but we have space where we're building a berm and the garages are able, according to the Metrolinx guidelines, are able to be encroaching into that berm. So it's more unique use of space on the site. So overall, we're pretty excited about a design that while high density and certainly in keeping with the intent of the official plan, goes quite a bit beyond that and considers how do we make a great space that considers massing. And I think hopefully you'll see through the next few slides that we get into a lot of variation in architectural detailing to try to make a very interesting site as well. If you're interested, I just broke out the stats at a quick glance. I'm happy to answer any questions. I wasn't going to speak to each one, but every building for the most part, or most of them have different unit sizes. There's different heights. There's step backs that have been integrated. So the tallest and working through to the townhouses at the very top there. And when I was getting to underground parking, you'll see that 1,167 residential and 22 commercial stalls underground. Sorry, I just skipped forward, my mistake. So the vast majority of parking on the site is underground, with only 97 residential with the townhouse garage stalls and 104 commercial up on the surface. So here's the design in renderings that we want to present to you over a few slides, and then that concludes the presentation. Both Lockhart and Yonge Street will be widened and upgraded in accordance with your capital plans. We've taken the liberty of showing, widened space for illustrative purposes only. The intent is to give an overview of how the site conceptually and massing will be put together. You will see this is a bird's eye view of the urban square right at the intersection of your gateway into the city of Barrie. I'll take another shot of that for a moment, but it's intended to be a private space that is open to the public. And then you will see various architectural details, cantilevered buildings, variation in building materials and glazing sizes, projecting balconies, inward type balconies, green roofs throughout. The intention is to evaluate all of those elements in much greater detail at site plan approval. And we hope that some of these these rooftop areas will be able to be used as amenities. At a minimum, we hope to incorporate green roofs for the environmental benefits that are associated with it. This is the other gateway bird's eye view. Again, this is the rail line heading north, and this is Lockhart Road on the bottom of the screen. So giving you an illustration of the passive use of a berm that will be constructed. It's a derailment containment berm is effectively what it is, that will be built adjacent to the rail line. And then the massing of different buildings throughout the site. This is the actual shot at ground level of the gateway itself, where the urban square is proposed to be located right at this intersection. And you can see quite a variety of intended variety of building materials, shapes, window placement, balcony orientation, and then a strong high ceiling along the Yonge Street corridor itself to activate and engage the streetscape itself. And then if you can look at the bottom picture first, this is continuing to the southerly primary entrance of the site, where there's an internal roundabout. And so continuing on with ground floor commercial spaces with residential above of varying sizes and configurations. And then at the north end of the site, the townhouses you can see here, 3-story modern in design. Again, these are quite conceptual in nature, so the details will be fleshed out at the site plan approval stage. But if you can see, the intention has been to bring ground-oriented pedestrian door fronts directly to the sidewalk to activate the streetscape. And this is the last image. It shows the more interior spaces to give you a magnitude of this is the smaller space, mind you, but coming in from the primary entrance off of Yonge Street into a traffic circle. And this is one of this is the smaller of the amenity spaces at the ground level that have yet to be programmed, but there's plenty of space and opportunities to integrate very usable space that will be available to the residents. I hope you're as interested in this as we are, your worship and members of council. It's taken a lot of time and effort to get to this point, and we put a lot of work into this, but we'd be happy to continue to refine the plan based on the input we received tonight and from staff and agencies. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Duhamel. I will ask Michelle Banfield, our Director of Development Services, just to give us an update on the status of the application.
Good evening, Mayor Lehman, members of Planning Committee. Further to Mr. Duhamel's presentation, please be advised that planning staff are completing the technical review process. A neighborhood meeting was held in October 29th, and no members of the public attended this meeting. Staff are currently reviewing the appropriateness of the application, in particular the following matters: conformity with the Hewitt's secondary plan, including the proposed density and the interface between the existing and anticipated development in the area; site servicing, grading, and drainage as it relates to the master plan studies prepared for the Hewitt secondary plan; and the overall functionality of the site as proposed, including such matters as pedestrian and vehicular circulation. Staff will continue to work with the applicant and their consulting team to address any feedback received through the public consultation process, as well as any comments raised through the analysis of these applications by technical staff and our agency partners. These items may require some revisions or updates to the plans and studies submitted. All comments and questions from the public during the technical review process, including all the calls, letters, emails, and what we hear tonight, will be included, addressed, and answered in the planning staff report. A staff report providing a recommendation to Planning Committee on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is anticipated to be brought forward in the fall of 2020. All submission materials and key dates associated with the subject applications are available online for viewing on the city's proposed development webpage under Ward 9. Alternatively, the file manager, Dana Suddaby, can also be contacted directly. This concludes my presentation, and I thank you for your attention.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Banfield. For those watching, if you haven't yet registered and you do wish to speak at this point in the public meeting, the email again is cityclerks, all one word, @barrie.ca, or call 797-5353, and our staff can send you the information you need to participate. That being said, Ms. Cook, have we got anybody who wishes to speak at this public meeting? Okay, the clerk was still on mute there, but she advises me that we do not have anybody who has registered or called in at this point. We do have somebody, but it looks like they are looking to speak at the next public meeting. Not seeing any, I will go to questions of clarification from members of Planning Committee. Clarification questions from members of committee. Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Mr. Duhamel, thanks for the presentation. How long do you, is this gonna, if this is approved and rezoned, do you expect this to be done in phases? Will those, are those phases hard in stone, or, you know, are they up to, or are they up for deliberation depending on how the economy and other factors go? And if so, what timelines would you, preliminary timelines would you expect? The reason I ask this, I know that's usually a tough question with developments, because a lot of things can happen, but this is a very critical mass project and it's at the gateway of our city. So I think a lot of people are just kind of curious to see construction, build out, and timing.
Mr. Duhamel.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of committee. Is my screen still shared with everyone?
No.
Okay. May I reshare that if that's okay?
Mr. Nolan, if you can pull that up, that would be great, or permit that. There we go.
I'm just going to roll back. So we have tentatively discussed the phasing of the site, certainly into basically 3 blocks: Block A, Block B, and Block C. This has the highest density, the most underground parking at this area, and it's the most sensitive relationship with Lockhart and Yonge Street. So the intention is to either build B or A first, and then followed by A or B. So if you follow that, so likely if you could think of townhouses, then the mid-rise, and then into the highest density at this point. This entrance would be built to support this plan at the same time as this likely it may need to be that this is the primary entrance and this is a construction entrance. We have to think about how all this site works at a construction level detail as part of site plan approval. But the intention certainly is to proceed with a site plan application this year is the time frame that is hoped for, depending of course on staff and agency and your own feedback, and ultimately a recommendation on this application. And then that would take us into site plan approval in 2021, where the first phase of development could proceed. Let's say, later in 2021, that would be an ideal time frame. And I think this is likely, could be up to 10 years for a full build out, because it's a very large project. So we're not, I don't want to provide you any illusions that this is simply a quick couple of years where this will go through. There's a lot of buildings on the site. It's a very large site, and I think it's a very important site to Barrie. So to your point, I think as part of the site plan approval consideration of the treatment of the site, and make sure that it doesn't look like a perpetual construction zone for 10 years. We'll have to work with your staff very closely on that, Councillor Mouse, and make sure that the site is treated appropriately over the time period that we're dealing with. So that's a good question and point.
I appreciate that. Just a couple follow-up questions. Do you have any, I know this is a site plan, but do you have any preliminary plans on incorporating some sort of public art? Or again, just because the facade of this is so important to me, and I think a lot of people, once again, it's a gateway to the city. It's kind of the Ward 9 welcome. Is there any plans to incorporate public art? I know you've incorporated the green roofs, which is a very pleasing aesthetic, if that's your intent from the renderings, or are you going to be deliberating that at a later stage?
Through your worship to Councillor Morales, that's a great question. There's a lot of details to sweat, so to speak, when we get into the site plan approval stage. Public art is a great point. I've long been a big supporter of public art and projects, and effectively it's public art that private art that the public enjoys in the same sense, or whatnot. But I think that's a great suggestion. I will take that back to the ownership, and if there's an opportunity, I will certainly encourage that and see what can be done. There's, for example, if you can still see my cursor, there's a roundabout in the middle of the site that it would be a great gateway feature internally as you're entering in. There's opportunities to create nice structures or otherwise on the streetscape at the entrances, right at the primary gateways. So I think there's lots of opportunity to do interesting and high quality things on this site. We just have to roll up our sleeves and get into the details when we get to the site.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And my last question, Mr. DeHamel, not only does this have the potential to be the gateway to the city, but also the gateway to possibly affordability. With so much density on the site, what's your client's current plan about working with staff about hitting some sort of quotas for affordable units? Again, you have so much density. I know that you can reasonably build this in to make this, not only a great facade for a gateway to the city, but a gateway to home ownership or dignified housing.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Morales. Another great question on affordability. Our expectation is that there will be a variety of unit types that are available, and that certainly the smaller unit types will be affordable by definition. The challenge when you're dealing with a site that is, this isn't a single site with a single building where it's very easy to start costing out and projecting, deliverable date of year 2. This is a much different type of site with a much longer construction horizon. So we won't even know what affordability is just yet until we actually get down the road and see what affordability numbers are in a few years' time. But I certainly expect that an application like this there will be everything from bachelors and 1-bedroom apartments up to larger suites. So certainly not everything's going to be affordable, but there will be an affordable element to this is fully expected. Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. DeHamel, for your time. I did say that was my last question, so I'll say this thought that came to my mind as a comment. You did an excellent job with the project at 70 Dean, incorporating the electric charging car rough-ins. So I trust that your current client also sees the vision in incorporating infrastructure for making it EV ready. But again, by the time this is possibly built out in 10 years, this might not be seen as an extra. This might just be seen as a necessity, but definitely would be great to kind of see leadership on that. So appreciate it.
Absolutely understood. And I will also include that in my discussions with the ownership group. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Councillor Morales. Councillor Aylwin, I have you next.
Thank you, Mayor Liebman. Councillor Morales asked the question on affordability, so I hope that conversation will continue in earnest. Thanks.
Thanks for that. And Councillor McCann, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, and welcome, Mr. Hamel. Excellent presentation. Like Councilor Erwin, Councilor Morales asked pretty much all the same questions I was going to ask. I just wanted to maybe comment on Councilor Morales's branding, the Ward 9 welcome. Kudos to you, Sergio. And the high quality, Ray. Could you expand a little more on what your client's vision is for quality? I mean, I love seeing renderings. Renderings always look good. I've never seen a bad rendering, but sometimes when you get the finished products, you know, you get, I see Jeff's rolling his eyes. I mean, it's a shared consensus that, you know, we see renderings that are beautiful, and then the end result isn't anywhere close to the rendering. Could you share the vision of the builder on how he's going to keep the level high, how he's going to keep the quality high, and are you going to keep the gardens? And maybe a quick little question is, you know, what is the return on investment to having rooftop gardens for the builder? There's a little understanding why there's so many rooftop gardens.
Okay, well, there's a few questions there, Your Worship, through to Councillor McCann. The vision is, as tried to be articulated in the actual renderings themselves, and I will flip a few slides to actually. So excuse me for this. There, the intention is to create a very interesting space. And the word high quality is thrown around quite easily in the development world. What's high quality? Is a great long-lasting material, or is a great long-lasting material that looks great to some and not to others? What the intent is to have is high quality material in the context of making sure that it's durable and maintenance free, so that it's not peeling or looking poorly after 5 years or 10 years time, to provide variation in windows and glazing. So see, this isn't just a pretty picture of the intention design here. Of course, it's going to be vetted in much further detail when we get to site plan approval, but there's a method to the architect's madness, and the architect may be on the line and he can speak to anything that I've missed, but you can see that the glazing is quite different on this building versus this building, which has a more traditional feel to it, which is quite different from the inward balconies in this area, which are somewhat more reminiscent of some more upscale apartments in Toronto. So high quality to me speaks to the use of the space, making sure that the materials, there's a variation of materials, variation in glazing, there's interesting space so that there's setbacks, step backs in the building, that there's architectural details that are different, and a more welcoming space for pedestrians to walk along the street. That's how I think we develop high quality. I think that at the end of the day, the staff are going to want a lot of details at the site plan stage. And the intention of this developer is they do not want to just plunk 10 buildings that are the same on the site and create a very homogeneous, uniform framework that's the lowest cost available to them. That's not the design vision. I don't think a site that would be developed in this location over the period of time we're talking about would be particularly successful if you tried to approach it in that more homogeneous viewpoint. So, we will be held to task, of course, through the site plan approval stage. My comments are public at this public meeting. Staff are going to be expecting a high quality buildings at this, and as city council and staff will expect high quality buildings as a gateway into your city. Hopefully we can deliver on that, Councillor McCann, but that is the vision and the intent.
Well, I appreciate that, Ray. I really do. And maybe you can just instill a little more confidence in this building, because I do believe that Barrie is at a crossroads right now. And we've got the ability to really excel and become a unique culture, a unique city. Like Councilor Morales said, this plot of land holds a lot of weight. And looking at your renderings, it really looks to me this will be a city within a city. They'll have a grocery store. They'll have some, obviously, lots of outdoor space. The GO train is going to be there. Is the demographic designed for a walkable city where most people will be purchasing an apartment here would be going to the GO train, going down to the city? Is that your intent? Is that your thought, your flow of thinking?
Yes. So I will say that the actual marketing element, which drives right into the area of the unit sizes and the exact features and type of deliverables internally, we're not there at that point in the process yet, Councillor McCann. Where we are is we know that this site is really fantastic for a number of reasons from a sales and from an overall usage perspective. How many sites exist where you can walk across the street to a rec center, library, elementary school, and a high school, and walk down the street and go on to the GO station? And how many sites exist like that? There just isn't a lot that are available that you can do a great, you have basically a blank slate, which this site does. It doesn't have a lot of constraints from an environmental perspective or otherwise. We're roughly working with a rectangular shape with lots of road frontage. And so I think we can do something really, really amazing here. The devil's in the details, Councillor McCann. I would encourage, as you are because as all council is you're incorporated into the site plan review process. You're notified. If you see something you don't like, let's talk about it. Let's work on it. I think that's all I can offer you is collaboration to create a great space. That's what the design intention is. My experience, 25 years of doing this, the more we work together, the better the product. And if we can do that, then I think we would all be proud of this at the end of the day.
Yeah, and they got the right guy leading this pack right now, Mr. Hamill. You've always been great to deal with, and I know you've been working with the ward councilor, Sir Morales, and I would like to be, CC'd on lots of things as it's right beside Ward 10 as well. So, sure. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any others who wish to ask a question of clarification of Mr. Duhamel? I'm sorry, I don't have, because we're screen sharing, I can't see everybody. Maybe Mr. Nolan, you can just go back to the gallery view. Okay, thank you. Anyone else who wishes to ask a question of clarification? Okay, in the interim, we do have a member of the public who has asked to speak now for this meeting. So I will ask Ms. Cook to put them on the line.
Hey, Sebastian Vassoff, Ducala, Street Department 608. So overall, based on what I'm hearing so far, I guess first off, I'm just really, really impressed all around with what I'm hearing so far from this particular development. So really no outright complaints whatsoever. I guess all I have to say is, considering this is an area of Barrie that is a massive dogging background. Sorry about that. Seeing as this is a area of Barrie that has not been developed at all, and it's sort of a blank slate. On the one hand, I am really, really excited to see something of this magnitude and that far out. But I guess just to echo that even further, what I find interesting is that right now, if you look at Barrie as a whole, the idea of the two intensification corridors and how I guess Barrie's looking to overall change the distribution of which areas of the city feel like they have a central point. I guess I'd just like to say that on the specific note of this particular property, I'd be curious to the extent of one, again, on the note of looking far into the future, as this area of Barrie gets developed and becomes as, I guess, metropolitan as the rest of Barrie is now, and acknowledging that by that point there is a good chance that parts of Innisfil will be fairly built up too. I guess my only thought, not that it's a complaint at all, but maybe just to maybe reemphasize what everybody else was saying, is if this is going to be at the end of an intensification corridor, is it possible to have not just this site, but this site be the first of many in that area of not just being the end of an intensification corridor, but having some of the intensity that we're looking for down at the very in the downtown. So on that, that's all I had to say. But thank you so much for taking my call.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vassoff. Thanks for those comments. Ms. Cook, have we got anyone else on the line? Okay, we're just going to check members of Planning Committee, make sure there's nobody else waiting in the queue for this public meeting. And just while we're waiting, anybody else who had a question of clarification for Mr. Duhamel? Okay, seeing none.
There are no further speakers for this public meeting.
Okay. Mr. Duhamel, we appreciate you being here. I will save my questions. I think obviously the development forum is substantial for this corridor. And there is a road ahead, but thank you for coming tonight, making a presentation on what is obviously quite a substantial and exciting development right at the south end of our city, right by our South GO station. So thank you for that, and I will declare the public meeting for this proposal concluded. And we will move into the second public meeting. Okay, for the second public meeting, I will now call on Tyler Pierce from Smart Centers Real Estate Investment Trust to provide the presentation concerning an application for a temporary use bylaw on behalf of Barry Bryan Developments Limited. This is for property legally described as Part Lot 7, Concession 12 in the city of Barry at Harvey Road and Highway 400. Mr. Pierce, are you on the line? There we are. And we can see your name, Mr. Pierce, but not see you or get any audio at this point. I don't know if you're still coming in, but.
Mr. Pierce had indicated earlier he had some trouble. Perhaps we'll give him a second to reconnect.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually probably a good idea. Ms. Banfield will actually give us her update just while we wait for the consult. Oh, sorry. Not sure who we're getting audio from there. Okay, Ms. Banfield, we'll have Ms. Banfield do her update first while Mr. Pierce tries to get his tech working. So, Ms. Banfield, status of this application.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman and Planning Committee. So this is an application to continue an agricultural use limited to field crops that was initially presented and approved to council back in 2014 as a way to utilize these lands in advance of the Bryan Drive extension and the ultimate and future development of the property. So this public meeting and the new bylaw are required to continue this interim use as the temporary use bylaw expired in February of this year. So this temporary use bylaw, if approved, would be permitted for a 3-year term and it would expire in 2023. So a neighborhood meeting wasn't required as part of this application, and the only correspondence we've received has been about a resident about the potential archaeological significance of the lands. Prior to this meeting, the application was circulated to city staff and external agencies for comment, and those representatives and different ministries and our agency partners provided comments stating that they have no concerns with this temporary use bylaw for agricultural field crop uses as an interim use on the subject lands. Planning staff are expecting to bring this recommendation report back to Planning Committee in the fall of 2020. All of the comments received through the technical review process, including addressing the point about the archaeological significance of the site, will be addressed in the final staff report. All of the submission materials and key dates are available for viewing on the city's proposed development website under Ward 7. And the file manager is Celeste Kitsemtree, and she could also be contacted directly for information. So this concludes my presentation, and I do thank you for your attention.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Banfield. Doesn't look like the applicant's tech is working just yet.
Mayor Lehman, point of procedure.
Yes, Councilor Morales.
To attempt to kind of balance out getting the applicant as representative to speak, might we move to announcements and inquiries just to buy more time and still meet that, or we're not able to do that?
Oh, we can certainly do that, but we don't normally do that at Planning Committee. We've already done inquiries and announcements tonight. On the other hand, we're trying to fill some airtime, Councilor Morales. So if you have an inquiry or an announcement, I'm perfectly willing to have you ask it now. But just before we get to that, I'm just going to ask Mr. Nolan for an update on the technical issues there. Are we able to get the applicant on board? Technically, we're in the public meeting at the moment. Oh, Mr. Piers, can you hear us?
Hi, is it working?
Oh, we've got your audio.
All right, that's what happens when you have two microphones and two devices, unfortunately.
Okay.
Video, I will not have video, unfortunately. I was doing that through my phone.
Oh, we lost your audio.
Am I here?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
So apologies, my webcam's on back order, so I was doing video and audio through my phone.
Okay, are we going to do a share screen for Mr. Pier's presentation? There we go. Okay,
All right.
Mr. Piers, the floor is yours.
Am I still connected? I apologize, my Bluetooth speaker just made another noise.
You're still connected. We can hear you.
Thank you again. Members of Council, Your Worship, and members of the public joining us online. I'm Tyler Piers, and I'm with Smart Centers, and I'm joined this evening by my colleague, Mark Resnick. So our application is fairly straightforward. It is for our 87-acre undeveloped property located at Highway 400 and Harley Road. It is the legal owner name is Barry Bryan Developments, Inc. And we have approximately, what do we have here, 700 meters along Highway 400, 630 meters adjacent to Bryan Drive, 320 meters adjacent to Thrushwood Drive, and then along the back, it's approximately 700 as well. And our application today is for an extension of a temporary bylaw use. It's for permission to continue farming the subject property. And the property has been farmed since 2014 through these extensions previously. And so, yeah, it's fairly straightforward. That's the continued use we're seeking today. And the property, this is for a planning background. For those curious or unaware of it, it is a dual zone designation. So the portion closer to Highway 400 is zone general commercial, and then closer to Thrushwood to the west is zoned general industrial. And there is environmental protection zoning as well along the creeks, along Whiskey Creek and Lovers Creek, which both run through the property. And crops, if anyone's interested in the crops being farmed, soybean and corn have been the crops that the farmer has been planting since 2014. So the application, it'll allow for the continued farming of the property. This is an interim use. This has never been applied for as a long-term use because we do envision development here one day. But as that is not in the cards at the moment, we are continuing to farm the property until future development comes to fruition. This application does not seek or result in any changes to the existing land permissions on the property, so we're not looking to rezone any items, and the application does not seek any development. Once again, it's just to continue farming the lands. And that is my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Piers. So as we have already heard from Ms. Banfield about this one, it is a fairly straightforward application for a continuance of a lapsed temporary use bylaw. Do we have anybody? We had one member of the public, I think, who was waiting to speak for this. Can we get them up now? Oh, there we are. And if we could just turn on her audio, or maybe that's Ms. McLean. We're just trying to get your audio on here. There we go. Ms. McLean,
Hi.
can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi.
I can. Yeah, I didn't have anything to address. I just signed in just to actually watch the meeting to see what you guys were zoning down there, because I didn't know, and it's right behind where I live. So.
Okay, fair enough. So
it was just interest sake.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. Yeah, it's just a continuance, proposed to continue the agricultural use for now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have anyone else on the line who wanted to speak at this meeting, Ms. Cook?
Just checking with Mr. Nolan.
Okay, thank you.
We have no further speakers, Mayor Lehman.
Okay, with no further speakers, are there any questions of clarification on this one to the applicant? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, it's not a direct question for the applicant, more of a comment to staff, and it's in relation to the correspondence that we received from a resident electronically earlier today in regards to this. And I just want to ensure that when the staff report comes forward, that the concerns raised by that one resident can be addressed as best as possible.
Thanks for that, Councillor. Oh, sorry, I talked on the end of that, Councillor Harvey.
That's okay. That would be all my comments in regards to this.
Okay, Ms. Banfield, could you just confirm that matter would be addressed as part of the staff report?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it would be.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any other questions of clarification for the applicant or Ms. Banfield? Okay, seeing none, I will declare the public meeting concluded. Thank you very much, Mr. Piers. Thank you, Ms. McLean, and the others who are watching tonight. Councillor Morales, was there something time sensitive that you were looking to inquire or announce tonight?
No, I was just trying to make sure that we fill the time while we got the IT going, but let the record show you asked me to voluntarily speak.
I 100% did, and I reap what I sow. Thank you, Councillor Morales, for volunteering to help with the airtime. But since we're good now, I can declare the Planning Committee meeting concluded. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in again, and we will see you all next Monday night. Bye-bye.